Shoulders. Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of Helotes City Council. It's January 25th, 2024. Time is 7 p.m. If you'll please rise with me, we'll have the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Father God, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather before you. I pray, Lord God, that your grace and mercy will continue to be upon us. Guide us with your wisdom that we'll make intelligent, wise decisions for the benefit of the entire city. May your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Praise God. Somebody didn't put it back right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We are honored to have our state representative, Mark D'Orazio, in our presence here. Thank you for joining us and taking a look at what's going on, boots on the street, as it were. Appreciate the good working relationship we have with you and your officer, and pray Godspeed on your continued endeavors. And thank you again for coming down to take a look at what's happening here in Helotes. This point, we'll go to citizens to be heard. We have several here. We have nobody online signed up. Okay. Each person, as you're called, please come up, state your name and your address for the record. And you have 3 minutes to share whatever's on your mind. We'll start with David Banks.
Hello, good evening. I'm David Banks. I own the Cottage of Helotes Antique Store, 18618 Old Bandera Road. And I would like to give my 3 minutes to a fellow business owner because we have the same, she has a list of topics that we like to discuss, but she has got it more eloquently discussed and outlined. And if I could give the floor to her for the next 3 minutes of mine, I'd be glad.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Tammy Poynton of Helotes Country Club, 14687 Old Bandera Road. I'm going to go fast because 3 minutes doesn't last long. Old Town, right now, I think it's consisting of two sides of the bridge. It's the side of the bridge this is on and the side of the bridge my bar is on. And I don't think we're getting the same treatment that this side of the bridge is getting. And my examples are market days. I was given the reason it doesn't come down there is because no electricity. It's been proven there's electricity with the parades and everything. Less than half the vendors need electricity. They also said road closure, but there's been road closures for runs, bike races, parades, and they said they could provide trash cans and porta potties. There has been trash cans and porta potties provided for other events. I don't see how it's so hard to spread out Old Town to help our side of the bridge grow. It's really uncomfortable. If you walk through market days, if there's dogs or strollers in front of you, it's uncomfortable. We should share it with all of Old Town. Halloween, I don't understand why it's at the fairgrounds. That's I don't even have words for that. Would it be an Old Town since it is trunk or treat and all the businesses in Old Town, we just get forgotten. The Gardens of Helotes has a big event. We did it before in the little circle. We could do it all through Old Town. We would appreciate it. In Old Town Fairgrounds, what is that? That's nothing to do with Helotes barely. I have towing signs on my property. Apparently now it's a violation. When I took over the business, the towing signs were there. Now they're in violation. How am I supposed to legally do towing if I can't have towing signs? That's it. Why do they change now? Permits. We had a permit for a deck. I have residents and business people are saying permits are so hard to get approved, and it's over and over again. If there's a permit you want completed, have it filled out what we need to fill out. We're having it sent back because they need other information that's not on the permit. So if you're requesting information, it should be on the permit you requested the first time. Also, you should really do a spell check and grammatical check. Foundation is foundation on the permit. Old Town Helotes signs along Highway 16. If you notice, they're horizontal. If you go to any other of the small towns, they run vertical. So when you drive, you see Helotes signs. If you go to Lukenbach or Fredericksburg, they're just like stop signs or yield signs. You see them. If you want to see Helotes Old Town signs, you got to drive to look for them. I mentioned that before. It doesn't help us. Republic Trash. We really had no choice when Republic Trash took over. I know I brought it up before, but it's like a monopoly. My price went up drastically, and I don't have a choice. I have to pay it if I want my trash picked up. I don't think it's fair as a business owner. Food trucks. I tried to get food trucks to my business. The way they have to go through Helotes over and over and over again, they don't want to deal with Helotes at all. And it was like $100 and something for a permit. I have one guy who sent me, who it was sent to him, it's over $300 for a year. Continue in a minute. Thank you.
All right. We are limited to be able to respond except for in very specific instances of clarification. Number one, a number of things that you identified are actually private events, like fairgrounds events, not city events. So that's not something we sponsor or have any control over. Please bring permit questions to the office. We can address them individually. Garbage, that was a bid out contract. However, if you have seen any of my continual notifications due to cancellation of their contract, but so that we could still at least have garbage service, the Republic will be continuing their service through the end of February, effective March 1. We have a new contract, which I think has something like a 38% price decrease on all commercial. So that's already been fixed, and that is something I personally negotiated out with a new company called Frontier. We have signed the contract, and they take and they'll be replacing garbage cans post haste here with the takeover of March 1st. So there are a lot of things that are happening and addressing. Road closures is always a difficult task, but look forward and please invite anybody, including you and anybody in general that has an issue. Please make an appointment, come in and let's talk about specific issues so that we can address them appropriately and in detail on utilizing specifics as they require, as opposed to generalities, which I'm limited to here at the dais in this forum. But with that, our next is Buck Russell.
Thanks for the opportunity. Buck Russell, the 13110 Spring Run in Iron Horse Canyon. I'd like to speak on the agenda item with reference to the EDC remodel of their facility in the Helotes Visitor Center. They were approved a $250,000 budget for the remodel. They're coming back to you asking for a $400,000 remodel. That does not include a $30,000 security system and a $25,000 internet system. So $455,000, pushing $500,000 to remodel a visitor center. The building is appraised at $989,000. Basically, they're asking for 46% of taxpayer dollars to remodel a building that does not belong to them. The taxpayer funds also are going to pay for a facade to redo the front of the building. It's also going to pay for a sign. The sign, I understand, is probably going to need a variance, so it's out of normal standards for Helotes. Also, the building is going to have the EDC with a new entrance, new wood. It's going to be pretty, yes, absolutely. But the rest of the building is going to be off center to it. It's going to be a 50-50 kind of a mix mash, kind of uncompleted look, along with the parking issues that are going to be. There's no parking. You don't even know the building's there. And the building we're talking about, of course, is right over here on 1560. And you can't see the building from Bandera Road because of the traffic. You're paying attention to traffic. It has the traffic barricades, keep people from exiting Bandera Road. Plus also one of the other tenants does large vehicle, like vehicle wraps and stuff, and they take number of spaces, plus they do block a view. It's a visitor center. I really kind of believe the visitor center would be in Old Town to support Old Town. People don't come to Helotes to go to Bill Miller's or Shots or something like that. They come to Helotes to visit Old Town. So it would be nice to be able to give somebody a pamphlet or invite guests for the meetings that the building's going to host and have those people enjoy Old Town, grow Old Town, and grow what Helotes is known for. So the EDC back in July did sign a new lease, a 39-month lease that is just under $12,000. We're already, almost 6 months into that lease, and we hadn't started any construction. So if we spend almost $500,000 on the remodel on somebody else's building, what keeps the landlords from terminating that lease or not renewing the lease, selling the building, or increasing because all of a sudden they have a $400,000 plus remodel and they can up the rent. And next thing you know, we've outpriced the EDC in the facility and they're looking for a new home. I just don't think it's necessarily in the taxpayer of Helotes' best interest to spend that much on a remodel on a building that does not belong to us. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much. I encourage you to stay for the items as there'll be some clarification on the agenda items to much of what you brought up. At this point, I have no other citizens to be heard. Nobody online, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we'll close the citizens to be heard. At this point, we'll looking for a motion, a second to approve consent agenda. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I think, let me just check on.
Mr. Mayor, there's no pooling or sharing time. So you don't get an additional 3 minutes. And that's clearly stated on the website. And I believe also on the back of the form.
But I do invite you, please bring your entire list and please meet with me. We'll go through everything item by item with you to get specific answers for you. Looking for a motion, a second to approve consent agenda items number 3 and 4 as written, unless there's one that wants to be pulled.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve agenda items 3 to 4 as written.
Okay.
3 and 4 as written.
Motion by Massey, second by Cato. No discussion needed. All in favor of approving consent agenda items number 3 and 4 as written, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Mayor's report. We do have a couple of updates. The updates, unfortunately, with our text dot improvements are that there are no updates. I continue to get on the phone and talk with project managers. Again, they continue to describe to me that they get quite a few phone calls and they're not happy about that. It just is what it is. And now there was not much headway made in those last conversations other than to tell us that they do not understand why we're saying May. And here's how we calculate it. At the end of November, there was 121 days of construction left. Days only count Monday through Friday, not holidays and not weekends. Well, so that's it's about 24 weeks. Take some holidays, 6 months from November should put us into May. But turns out that how they actually calculate it is days that they show up. So theoretically, this could go on for years. It only counts against their days remaining if they show up and do their day's work. So this is one of the problems I brought to our state representatives to see what we can do to work with TxDOT and get better project management. But seems to be held at the mercy of the subcontractors for whenever they decide to want to show up. It's a frustration that goes to many municipalities, not just ours. And we'll continue to work on that. But right now it is trending, as he tells me. He would not commit to a date. He would not say that it's not going to be done in May. And he would not say that it's going to take till December. All he would say is that it's trending towards the end of the year. I wished I had better news. The state of the city is going to be presented by the Helotes Area Chamber of Commerce on Tuesday, February 20th. from 11:30 to 1 p.m. at Flores Country Store. I'm very much looking forward to this presentation. This will be the third one we give, and it's a great opportunity to come out, especially if you're a business owner, and rub elbows with other businesses in town or other citizens, and get a good, thorough insight onto what's been happening in this past year and where we are in projects and how we are doing as a city. So I want to invite everybody else to come out and take a look at that. At this point, we're going to move on to item number 6. Looking for a motion and a second to discuss and take action on item number 6 as written.
And Mr. Mayor, I move we discuss, take action on agenda item number 6 as written.
Motion by Sanders, second by Cato. Sir?
This is pretty straightforward. We do this every year. Reach out to, I believe it's TxDOT, to see if we can actually continue to hold our annual Carnival Parade on a
Mr.
portion.
This is number 6.
Number 6. I'm sorry, number 6.
Oh.
PUD.
Sorry, this is about the PUD application, establishing amendment number 1 for site plan updates to Bandera Ranch.
So anyways, yeah, totally different topic. So anyways, so the way I understand this particular agenda item is you've actually you're changing some of the configuration of the PUD, correct? So you're removing some of the 2-bedroom actual homes, rental homes, and you're increasing the number of 1-bedrooms and 3-bedrooms. You're adding more garages. You're reducing some of the distance, the green space between the back end of the property to the residential property on the other side of the security fence. Is that
Actually,
about right?
increasing the green space in
Yes.
setbacks.
Okay, so I've got nothing negative to say. I wholeheartedly support this. You guys have worked really well with the city, and I just kind of want to say specifically with the neighborhoods, right? Trying to address their needs and concerns surrounding this PUD. So I fully support it. I don't have any questions
Okay,
on
great.
this agenda item.
Thank you.
Sir?
I have no questions.
Councilmember Stones?
Oh, I just was curious for my point of reference when I get questions, when I'm out and about talking with people. The updated plans and the increased green space is based on engineer recommendations for the retention pond, correct?
Right. So for the drainage improvements and so what we presented to you all, it's been a while, the original PUD. And since then, the engineers have really dug into the planning for the project and architects and how it actually will work. And so it actually, I think, is a benefit and is an improved plan that has more green space and greater setbacks. But yes, some of the green space along Scenic Loop will be detention.
And then secondly, I'm assuming the changes in configuration is just based on your research and market demand of what
Yes.
works for this PUD at
Right,
the current time.
And it seems that having more 1-bedrooms works, having bigger units, there seems to be more demand for that and increased garages. So they function even more so like a single family home than what we presented originally.
And finally, I just want to thank you. You had promised the residents to the back that you would do cedar fencing. And I remember that a year ago, and that was very important to them. So I saw that on the plan today, and thank you for listening to our residents and following through with what you've promised them. Thank you.
No comments.
Thank you.
I have a question about the extra garages and parking. I remember before parking was going to be like around, like visitors, okay, when
Mhm.
visitors come. So do the separate garages, I'm looking down at the bottom. Are those just separate garages on the bottom?
No, those are actually units.
Oh, those are units, okay.
They're just smaller.
And so the garages were added to the different,
The individual units.
Units.
So the original plan presented only had garages in some of the units, and now many more. There was 98 garages added. So most of them have.
now most of them have it. Okay, okay. But is there still going to be street parking?
The on-street parking, you can see some of the guest parking on that plan. A lot of the on-street parking has been removed for the garages and driveways, but there's the large parking lots towards the front, and then there's some guest parking scattered throughout and some on-street parking. but it's a bit challenging to see on the small plan.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
There's
see
parking
this.
Here.
Is that what these are?
Yeah, those are
Oh.
parking spaces there, parking there, parking here.
Oh, I
and
see.
parking
Those little
there. Yeah,
triangles.
those
Small,
triangles are,
small.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, whatever. I don't know what happened. Here. Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
see.
those are parallel parking spaces.
Oh, okay, okay. But in addition to those, most of these now have garages so they can park. It looks like 2-car garages in most
Correct.
cases.
And what's required by the PUD in city code is that there's 2 parking spaces per unit, a
Good.
minimum of.
And that little pad in front of the garage will they be able to park in front of the garage too? I mean, or does the garage hit the street, I guess? is
No,
what
I think
I'm
there's
saying.
enough space for a car to park in the driveway
Okay.
as well. There should be.
I like this plan much better now. I mean, because if there's a lot more green space around it,
Yeah.
before the buildings were almost all the way to the left and right.
Yeah, and we think, particularly a lot of neighbors had come out, not a lot, but there's a few neighbors who live on the left side of the plan, but technically the north side. And so hopefully they'll find this to be much more favorable.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. With no more questions, all in favor of approving item number 6 as written, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. At this time, looking for a motion, a second to discuss and take action on item number 7 as written.
Mr. Mayor, now I would like to move, we discuss and take action on agenda item number 7 as written.
Happy to accept. Second? Second by Cato.
So,
Yes, sir.
so very straightforward. So we do this every couple of years, like I was saying earlier. And so we ask for permission from TxDOT to be able to use part of Bandera Road to be able to do our annual Carnival Parade, which is a big deal around Helotes and the greater Helotes area. Have huge turnouts. It's one of those cool things that makes Helotes. I think we're voting to give the mayor the right to negotiate with TxDOT to come up with, was it a 3-year?
5-year.
5-year contract agreement. So I've got nothing else to say.
Start on this end, Councilman.
Well, it's good that to do it for 5 years. We were doing it every year, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Efficiency.
same thing. every year.
Remarks here,
Yeah.
sir. No, good idea. All right, all in favor of approving item number 7 as written, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. At this point, looking for a motion and second to discuss item number 8 and take action as written. This will be concerning our annual contract for the hazmat pickup.
Sarah, we discuss, take action on agenda item number 8 is written.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Sones. And again, this is just a continuation of what we've been doing. We found a good vendor for working with Corey. I see you back there, doing our hazmat. Not a lot of people take advantage of that, but we'll continue to do it. And this, in a similar fashion, provides for a multi-year contract to be able to provide continuity of services. Any additional comments?
No, I actually, this is an improvement, right? So last year was the first year. This year, the city selected a company to do this, and we're going to do it twice a year versus once a year. And hopefully people will take more advantage of that. I kind of convinced the mayor that a lot of people were going to show up on the inaugural, hazardous waste day last year. So we postured accordingly, and we were woefully disappointed. So hopefully this year, by doing it twice a year and doing it on short periods of time, that our residents who are paying for this, by the way,
Yes.
take it full advantage of it. So anyways, this is a great thing.
Councilmember?
I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if this is in the purview of the agenda item, but I'd like to just recommend to city staff that we hold it in early spring and fall and not delay it for any reason, because I had so many questions about when is it? And then Councilmember Sanders and I, again, expected so many people because we were getting so many questions and we were woefully disappointed by the turnout. However, I do think time of year makes a big difference. So
We'll
That's all. I
definitely
have.
And that is our goal, is once this contract, we can get it set so that we can do it between March and April and then do it in the fall. The first year, and that's why we wrote the contract where we said up to two, not guaranteeing two, because we're gonna try it with two to see what the turnout is and see, because otherwise it does cost the city a little bit more to have two, but it depends on how that turnout is. And then we'll decide at that point if we'll go back to one or we'll continue to do two.
And if we, as this is ongoing to keep the set time, so people
Correct.
have in their mind, okay, this month, every year, or 2 months
Correct.
would be helpful.
Sir? No comment. I think it's a great idea and very much needed.
Is this a by weight or by volume? Or is it just like one cost covers everything?
No, it's by volume. It depends on what we take in.
The more volume you get, the
Mhm.
more.
And and there's a category, so, you know,
So if you take empty paint cans or take,
Like half empty paint cans.
1,000 gallons of methyl ethyl death, it's gonna be on
Yeah.
volume
Sure.
of whatever we got.
Okay.
So,
That makes sense.
I'm fine with.
Okay, no further discussion needed. All in favor of approving item number 8 as written, say aye.
I,
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have 3 related agenda items, but distinctly different. At this point, we're looking for a motion and a second to discuss and take action on item number 9, which will be for approving amendment number 1 to increase the expenditure amount from 250,000 to 400,000 for the development of the Helotes Visitor and Business Center.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make that motion that we take action and discuss item number 9.
And I'll second that.
second,
Okay, we got motion by Merchant, second by Massey. I'd like to point out a clarifying mark before we get started. One is to clear up a little bit of confusion in the wording here. As my understanding as we're reading this, the $400,000 actually includes the expenditures that would be identified in items number 10 and 11. But there's a formality, particularly in transferring of funds, so that the total expenditures on everything would be $400,000. But really what we're taking a look at here is the specific cost associated in this item of the remodeling and expanded remodeling that they're proposing, which would actually be from 250 to 330,000. I get that number right, Craig? I'm sorry, Glenn. And so don't be dissuaded by the $400,000 tag on that. It's not 400,000 plus, it's 330 plus to equal 400,000 in that assessment. But with that clarification, we'll turn it over to Mr. Merchant.
Mr. Goldsby. So I did go to your meeting and I am still not, and I've read everything here and seen all the stuff, and I'm still just not quite clear about that discussion you guys had. I was hoping you could just kind of lay it out there for us, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. So I do want to point out that this decision has never been made lightly. We do a lot of research. We try to do planning. We solicit multiple bids. The particular item of having a visitor center has been identified in our strategic plan for the last 5 years and approved by the EDC boards, numerous different boards as far as the makeup, and has been approved every year by city council. Mr. Russell may not know, we have tried for 4 years to purchase land in and around Old Town without much success. So we're going back, looking at alternatives on what we can do. And yes, it is a large expenditure. We do have a first right of refusal on the building itself, understanding the level of investment we have. The property owner was a longtime resident of Helotes. He was a pastor here in Helotes. He is very well respected. His word is his bond, so to speak, as far as any Helotian here in this community. So I'd like to start off and say the original contract that we approved for renovation was an amount not to exceed $250,000. In that parameter, after receiving all the bids, we're at $282,000 for that same scope of work. The EDC had expressed an interest, or at least the board of directors had expressed an interest to have some additional modifications to the exterior to draw attention to the building. Since we are being housed at a visitor center and a business center, as well as some kind of beautification, so to speak. So that's where the extra monies come in to take it to $330,000 for renovation. The additional expenditures would include security system, furniture, and IT. So that's where our total budget gets to $400,000. During the budget planning process, we anticipated the cost to be in excess of 250. So in our budget, we plan to spend $330,000, which happens to be the exact same amount right that we're looking at for the renovation cost. So what we're looking at is an additional 70,000 from what we budgeted to finish out the space with furniture, IT, and security.
Wait, so you budgeted 370,
330.
330. We
Yes, sir.
approved 250.
In a resolution in 23, you approved 250,000. But in the budget in our 2024 budget, we have 330,000 that was also approved by EDC and by City Council.
Okay.
Would you like me to go through some of the, I guess, the specs of the space, the revenue side? Do you have any specific questions?
Yeah, so are you taking the space next to the current space?
Yes. So currently we occupy 1,000 square feet.
Right.
We've signed a lease for an additional 1,500, putting us at 2,500 square feet.
Is that
Total.
the Janus building or the space in between?
The Janus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Janus, okay.
And I know it was mentioned that we've been paying for 6 months. We haven't. When we signed the lease, we got 3 months free rent. We just started paying rent on that space.
Okay. So just to, I'm going to clarify some points as we go through so they don't get convoluted. The budget was originally approved as an annual budget for conceptual going forward. These were projects and an amount was included there, 330,000. When you came with a bid for an approval of expenditure, it was submitted for $250,000 despite a $330,000 allowance in the overall budget. 250 was what requested, 250 was what was approved. So just getting things straight as we go through this
We're asking for
conversation.
70 more.
Yeah.
As far as revenues and expenses, let's delay on that. Do you have additional comments or questions?
The facade?
Yes, sir.
Seems a bit much to me. Right. And I mean, I'm looking at the pictures, it looks nice, but then now we have all the rest of the buildings not looking like that.
Correct. So, I mean, if you would take a look down the street at Mod Pizza, take a look at HTO. They use multiple building materials on the facade, and they actually use a very similar product to what we've spec'd here, where you have the wood, and then you have either a stone or stucco, texture on the exterior. So it is an accent.
I mean, it looks great. That's good. But is the expectation that facade will really draw people in when you can't really see the building from Bandera? Because
There is actually no obstruction between the building and Bandera Road.
other than
They
the
wrote,
traffic, now I'm trying not to die on it.
we're in a very good corner, because as you're coming in, you're kind of hitting a corner around City Hall. So you almost run right into our building, visually speaking. But yes, this would draw attention. So we are limited on signage on this particular
This doesn't
property.
affect Like, you don't need a variance for the facade?
We would have to go to planning and zoning and to city council. I don't believe the facade needs a variance. The signage will need a variance because there's a master sign plan. That's the only reason that we need a variance on that aspect.
So in all of these plans that you made, like, everything here is a must-have?
At this point, The facade, you know, is one of those kind of change orders that we believe will bring value to the center because it brings visibility. So it makes it stand out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you want for a visitor center.
And then there's other things like, so you're gonna have office spaces in there and rent
Yes,
all
sir.
these places. So how many, I mean, there's gotta be, I don't know exactly, but I know there are empty buildings and spaces here in Helotes. What
Yes,
makes
sir.
the EDC think they're gonna be able to?
The difference is
Get the
price. Yeah, the big difference is price. So right now, if you're going to go into one of our new lease spaces, you're going to be paying for 1,000 square feet, 4,500 a month. There's very few small business owners that can afford $4,500 a month in base rent. So our rent for an office starts at 500. That in of itself is why we believe this will be successful. This is an incubator space. You're getting businesses that are growing from their homes, but cannot yet or do not have the revenue stream yet to be able to afford $4,500 a month.
Sure.
So right now I have 3 tenants that would like to sign, depending on how some of these items tonight go, for an annual lease. I mean, you know, to own a private office out of the space.
Okay.
You can reserve the right to.
Yes, so, yeah.
Turn it over. to
Go ahead.
Councilmember.
Did you do research on the prices of interior construction work before you brought this to council?
Yes, we solicited 6 bids.
Before you brought it to council?
Yes,
Then why did you ask for 250 when obviously the bids were higher?
before tonight, sorry, point of clarification. Before tonight, we solicited 6 bids. When we brought it the first time,
You had no idea what you were asking for,
we had not gone out for bid at that time.
but you could have done some research to find out what the going price was for something of
So
that nature.
we were off by 30,000, and that 30,000 was 100% in the electrical. We nailed every other aspect of this bid
Okay.
and estimate.
Can you please send the quotes that you got from the 6 construction bids or whatever they were called, they're quotes apparently. Could you please send them to Selena so that she could send them to the council so we can see what all the bids were and what they were for?
Sure.
I don't like making decisions on something that I don't have all the facts on. And I would like to see that. Also, was RJ Fight Construction, were they like the lowest quote?
They were, and I can tell you the bid started at 480,000 and went to 800,000.
Okay, well, it would be nice
So
to look at that.
the,
See,
uh,
that helps makes, you know what? When you send a lot of information to someone who's the decision maker, it helps us make the decision. I just, take your word for it. I'm sorry, I don't take people's word for anything, okay? So anyway, like I said, I would like to see that. So anyway, you just mentioned, and this is my next question, do you have any contracted businesses ready to inhabit the business center? Or is this simply conjecture? You said you have 3.
Yes,
And they said for year leases, $500 a month?
not all of them will be 500. We have one that's coming in at 750. We have one at 500, and I have one at 6.
And they're waiting to see how this all results. Okay,
Yes.
This meeting, okay. So you don't have a contract with them or anything?
Can't have a
Just-
contract without a space.
Okay, but you do have 3 businesses, so
Yes,
that's a month. Okay, but that's it for right now. And then you have some of the spaces that are like flex spaces. That
Correct.
people, okay. So that's kind of where you came up with your financial arrangement.
that's correct.
Okay, well, here's my thoughts on this. I don't understand how the EDC Board of Directors approved spending almost $500,000 on a building that someone else owns. What they did was approve enriching a private property owner with public money. The building, as Mr. Buck said, is appraised at $989,000. And so the EDC is asking for 46% of the building value for a building it does not own. And they will only inhabit 35% of it. So when you came to us in July of 2023 to request funding for the interior redesign and construction, the request was for $250,000. The center was also presented as an interim location until the EDC could locate a property in a better location, preferably Old Town. And there are lots available there still. And I voted for this because it was an interim location. But apparently that's not the thinking anymore, based on some of the things that you sent us. So now you're asking for $330,000 for renovation construction, which includes a new outside facade and a sign. So my comment is this: if the EDC didn't like the outside of the building to begin with, the EDC should not have moved forward with the project. This is a classic bait and switch. And the exterior you're proposing would be a mismatch for the others. I heard what you told Councilmember Merchant, that the other places have that. It's a shed, for goodness sake. Okay, it's a long shed. There's inadequate parking. It is not in the best location. And it's hard to see and hard to get to from Bandera Road. So again, you approached us with what I thought in July was an interim solution to see if a business center, visitor center would be viable. And with almost $500,000, the EDC could probably purchase a property or build a building that it could actually own somewhere in Helotes in a better location. So your estimate of recouping construction money in approximately 8 years indicates that this is not an interim location, but a permanent one. But you don't own the land or the building. Now, I understand you have a good relationship with the owner, and I do know Pastor Deputich is a very nice man. And I'm not denigrating him whatsoever. He actually beautified that shed, that business building. But the bottom line, I can't support a vote for this agenda request to increase funding for a project that will solely benefit a private property owner using public funds. So that's how I feel about it.
I'd like to address a couple of those items on there as far as the cost, believing that it's excessive for the space. If you look at any lease space, none of our business tenants own the property they're in when they lease square footage. And current construction costs are expensive. They're investing anywhere from $500 to $1 million in a lease space they don't own. So this is not an unusual price tag.
They sell the business though. You can't sell the EDC.
We actually are as a business center, and that's what the revenue projections are showing. If we lease the units.
We'll get into
To address
revenues here in a
parking.
second, but I appreciate your clarification, and it is true. We get through first round here, and then we'll bring out some financials. Craig, you have anything
I
specific?
just want to make sure what I'm voting on here. So you really aren't coming to us about the 330. That's already
No,
because it's in the budget.
To be very specific, what they're asking for, 330 was in their budget. They've planned for.
And we approved 250.
We approved 250.
Yes,
What they're asking for, because they required any expenditure for under agreement, which would be with the contractor, et cetera, exceeds $10,000. Well, the 250,000 exceeds that, so that's where they came to us.
Correct.
And now they want to change that to 330. This item is all about voting to increase to 330, of which will be the 280 plus additional exterior facade and other items.
So the 400 is gaps.
Plus the next two
gaps,
items.
Including the next two
No,
items?
the 400,000 includes the next two items. So it's oddly worded, but to clarify, what you're voting on this item and this item alone is solely to expand the expense of the remodel from 250 to 330, which will include excess cost in the interior and an entire exterior facade.
Because the way I read it was 330, and then in case any unexpected expenditures occurred, you needed that gap.
No,
we can
So that
address.
you wouldn't have to come back. That's how I understood it. So now I got it. I got it. So, yeah, the front end piece is what concerns me the most. So I don't understand why the building, I mean, I agree with, the sentiment that that's how everybody else leases here, but they're not using tax dollars in order to do it. And I think that's the point of contention here is we're following a business model, but we're spending tax dollars. And so that's why this seems and feels a little bit unusual to us. So have you approached the landlord on doing any of these potential improvements on their own? Because let's just say when our contract, or let's just say we move out in 10 years or 5 years, we leave them a very viable building. Matter of fact, better than you guys found it. And so, have you reached out to them to see if they would help assist that facade modification or changes?
I have, and so the answer is no from the landlord because of the lease rate that he charges all of us. So if you look at the lease rate here in Helotes is $30 to $36 a square foot. That's not what we pay in our center, right? Now, could that center justify that rate? No, but we pay just over $1 a square foot
Per month.
per month. Yeah, thank you. So it's
The other rate was
about 14
So,
per year.
Yeah.
So let me ask the question. So, Mr. Mayor, so if we vote this down,
A
and then
no,
they're logged into 250, and then they have to work within 250.
a no vote does not stop the project. A no vote just simply means that they are limited to spending $250,000 that was already previously approved.
That's what I needed to know. Okay.
You can't go back and deny what was already approved. It was an actionable item that we voted on, and they have acted upon that. So there's no taking that back. They can stop if they want. They can do whatever they want, but we can't take that approval back. This is only, are we going to approve more?
Roger that. Okay. Thank you.
And we'll get.
So this is government funds, but again, we have a revenue model built in to be able to recover those funds.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Glenn.
Councilmember?
Well, I was at part of the EDC meeting last Wednesday, and I kind of share the same concerns as my colleagues in that it's a property the city does not own, and I'm more comfortable with a conservative approach. When we talked about this in July, and I made a comment on the agenda item, oh, the inside is going to look so great and the outside's going to look like it is. I was thinking power washing, painting, a couple planters, new sign, new signage, things like that. So when I was in the meeting and saw the outside, I was a little surprised. And then when I went to prepare for the meeting on Monday and I went to the city website, I'm like, where is all the background material? Then I went to the EDC website and thought, I really need to do my homework and look at this and look at some of the minutes and video, some of the meeting videos, and there was nothing, like very little there. So the meeting minutes are not there from August through November, and very few videos. So it really would help me because I can't always get here on a Wednesday night. And then things are complex and I need to rewatch things. So I would go back to P&Z meetings all the time and rewatch them, even if I'm in the meeting. So that is something that is hard for me as a council member. And it kind of goes to Council Member Massey's point. The more information, the better. So that's all I have.
Well, not really supported this effort, at least in the beginning. This is a lot of money for a visitor center, as some people call it. But the more I understand it being a business center, primarily, at least that's the way I understand it, and a secondary visitor center, it seems to make more sense because there appear to be plenty of businesses that need a place to work out of, in which they don't have. So from that perspective, I think it's a good project. As far as the dollar amount, I can only trust the bids that you got are accurate. From the outside, I'd have to go back to what my colleague said regarding, it's not the most attractive place. If you want it to be a visitor center, it needs to be something eye-catching as much as possible. At the same time, if it's someone's business, you don't want it to appear to be in a shack. So for the most part, I would say I support it.
Before we get into second round, I'm going to make some comments. When this was brought to us in July, it was brought with a general business case. And I'm supportive of this venture in that capacity because this allowed for the development of your offices and also provided a needed service for incubating. And but what's most important is, as I take a look at what the mandate for EDC is, it's really threefold. It's one, to identify and bring businesses to Helotes. It's to keep businesses in Helotes, and it is to beautify and enhance Helotes such that the first two objectives can be met. What is not an objective is to be fiscally unsound. While we are spending and not necessarily here to make a profit, when we venture out into a business proposition, it needs to make business sense and actually be a profit. What I am and significantly concerned about is when I did finally get your financials for the proposed business plan, what I got is unfortunately woefully inadequate and filled with errors. For example, some of them may be typos and oversights, but when you take a look at, we can just disregard the top three when you're looking at hourly rates because he's just not renting out office by the hour.
Are you looking at the supplemental?
I'm looking at what he sent two days ago on, that's not my presentation. You can hold off on that one.
The scenario
Yeah, in
analysis?
fact, if you want to take that down, you can. So, but in the 25% projection, you're listing 4 of the 6 offices occupied 100% of the time, and 2 of them at 0, but still counting all the income 100% of the time of the 2 that are not rented. So instead of $4,765 a month, it is actually $2,415 a month. And that's a sizable error carried forward. Secondly, in your 50% scenario, you're listing 5 of the 6 offices occupied 100% of the time, and 1 of them occupied at 9 of the hours a month. That equals a 91% occupancy rate in your 50% example. And that's not a 50% occupancy rate, that's a 91% occupancy rate. And then when you go to your full, it's 100% all the time, but that's very unrealistic. When you are offering 1 and 6 month contracts and month-to-month contracts, and with the anticipation of small incubation and some turnover, there will always be a period of the time when this guy leaves on a day, you got some days to clean up or whatever, sign the new lease and move the next person in. Even if you have a 2-week turnaround several times over, a better figure to use in this instance would be 90% would be the best case scenario, which when you take a look at apartment complexes, they aim to be about 93%. And the smaller the number, it's hard. You know, if you have 400 apartments, you know, you can say, hey, we're 96% or 94%. But when you're only dealing with 6 offices, 90% is probably a reasonable best case scenario, especially for an untested, unproven new product. Additionally, when you look at your projections in your 10-year projection sheet, you use 5% growth in your revenues consistently across both your worst, expected, and best case scenarios. And that's fine, except you're not consistent. You only use 3.5% in one of your scenarios, 5% in the other scenarios. In your expenses, you use the same expense rate across the board for all 3 scenarios, but we know that your rent, not 3,200, but 38 after the first 2 years, and then future going forward. But the rest of your expenses, you apply for the rest of your years, 3.3%, 0%, 3%, 0%, 3%, 0%, and 1.5%. So even with your 10% increases in the first 2 years, you're only averaging a 2% inflation rate on expenses, operating expenses. And that's a differential of 150 to 250%. Something vastly, you're saying, hey, look at all these revenues going up here and our expenses, they're not going anywhere. And I don't think that's realistic. More realistic when you're doing forecasting is use the same percentage in both revenue and expenses. And so I did you the favor of reworking your financial. If you want to pull up this up, and I have copies for you. You want to pass down those, and for you guys, I'll pass that down there. Selena, if you want to stick that back up there, it should be presentation 3. And you might want to zoom in just a little bit, but essentially what we have here is I redid a worst case, expected case, and best case. And a worst case of 33%, maybe the idea doesn't take off. We get a couple originally. I don't think that is going to be the case, but I used a 33% instead of a 25%. So you have 2 of your 6 offices plus, based upon your 100% numbers, a third of the numbers on the hourly rentings, which would mean you'd have monthly revenues of about $2,700 or $32,000 and change a year. The expected case is I used about, well, let's jump ahead to best case, using 90% and following through on the same formats. We have a monthly revenue of $7,000 or $84,800. And an expected case, which I think is a more reasonable when you're assessing risk, of 60% occupied, which means you've got 4 offices rented all the time. You have 2 available. Somebody comes in and moves in one and somebody moves out of the other one. You don't have any downtime, but you still only have 4 rented. And while it may in fact end up being better than that, when we're taking a look at risk assessment and trying to figure out the viability of a project, I think that's a fair assessment for a small business venturing into something that isn't even here in Helotes. But that's revenues of $56,000 a year. Want to look at your expenses. Your expenses listed at starting out at $5,305 a month. But one of the things which you and I covered a little bit, you have rent, and I understand I'm taking year 3 rents there in this carries, but we already signed a contract for $3,800 a month going there. And we ran through some electric, water, and internet. We know the internet, and I was putting some assumptions there, but the total was $5,305, and so that's what I used, your expenses of what you had. But one thing you did not include, and that's the opportunity cost and the amortization of the building cost. Now, you discussed with me that $330,000, but really $350,000 because of some of the furniture you could take with you when you leave, and what the other stuff was, like security and some of the internet expenses, et cetera. So when you amortize $350,000 over 10 years, and it's one of the things you must do when you assess a cost, is your opportunity cost. We could buy a 10-year bond and get 4% right now, anywhere. So when you take a look at that, you have to include a $3,543 cost of the actual project as a monthly cost for the first 10 years, and then you can eliminate it after that. So when you take a look at that, your actual costs are $113,000 a year, which means your worst case scenario, you're losing $80,000 a year. In your best case scenario, you're losing $28,000 a year. So in order to break even, you'd have to have 125% occupancy all the time. Now, there is an offsetting factor of which I want to give you credit for. If you want to scroll to the next page, you will see that what I did is I went and had the worst and the expected and the best case scenario and ran them out for 10 years. You'll see in the worst case, we're losing $900,000, $600,000 in the expected. And even in the best case scenario of having everything rented out all the time, we're still losing $327,000 a year. And one thing that you did bring up in your deals, we are currently paying $27,700 in costs that we wouldn't be paying in this scenario. So we have to give you credit back for that. And that's what I have at the bottom line there for the 10 years. Showing 3% increases each year to be consistent means that we would save $317,000 in expenses to offset some of the losses. But that still means that after 10 years, our expected case is still to lose 300,000 plus. And in the best case scenario, still can't even break even. And flip to the next page and you'll have what would be a break-even analysis. And it shows actually 30 years of history here. In the first 10 years, I did something here. I said, what if we, because obviously we're not making any money by spending the 330,000 plus fixtures, et cetera. So what if we kept it at the 250,000? So this is the break-even analysis based on if we only spend $250,000, including furnishings, not plus furnishings, but including, so 220 on the finish out and 30 worth of furniture. In that case, for the first 10 years, we still operate at a deficit, not counting what we're offsetting on our costs, but gross project loss of $500,000 over that first 10 years. In the second 10 years, we actually get to eliminate the amortization cost of the project. So I gave you credit of $2,500 a month or $30,000 a year. That's why if you look at year 2034, the expenses drop from $132,000 to $101,000. But still, that next 10 years, we lose $300,000 more. And in the third decade of operations, we still lose $403,000. When you sum that up over the course of 30 years, we lose $1.2 million on this, but we saved $1.3 million in what we would be spending anyways. So after 30 years, we'll make $96,000. Our break-even point is 28.6 years. There's a couple things, and that's if we only spend $250,000. I am significantly disappointed in the lack of accurate financial projections concerning this project, because as it was presented to us in July, it was very reasonable and robust profit making, and we would be in the money here in no time at all, and it was a good overall project. I'm still for the project at $250,000 max, but there has to be some serious head scratching, because this does not serve the benefit of the public. And certainly I know nobody in EDC is planning on staying in that building another 28.6 years just to break even. There's just no point in doing that. So the only way this deal flies at $250,000 is if you guys break all sorts of real estate records and obtaining tenants that we still can't obtain for our empty businesses here in town, and keep your place chock full 100% of the time. And then we can break even in 21 years. But there is no way we're getting another piece of property or building a visitor center or doing anything beyond this, even if we do this at 250 years, for another 2 to 3 decades. And I'm not sure that's really the direction that EDC ultimately wants to go. But if it is, it'd be my recommendation that there's nothing we can do about the 250,000 that we approved, and it does serve a purpose for the community. And so if we do take a hit, that's great. And not great, but it's at least offset by some good we are doing for the long-term business incubation. But we can't take huge, giant financial hits, and we can't act irresponsibly overall. My recommendation is that the $250,000 kept as a max, and that you can seriously consider that may need to readdress, even talking with the landlord and say, listen, this is, financially, we can go forward with this and put this money into it, but you don't want to sell now, but give us an agreement to buy at a certain point. Because here's the other concern. You have $1 million building and you put $400,000 into it. And then 5 years from now, he decides he will go ahead and sell it to you. He's not going to sell it to you for $1 million, because he's got $1.5 million building. So then you pay $1.5 million building. You've paid for that remodel twice. Initially to increase the value, and then you have to pay again. And quite honestly, when you have tenants, then you have the cash flow from those tenants, and that actually makes that building now worth close to $2 million on a cash flow basis. This is of great concern to me, and I would highly recommend that EDC reevaluate if this is worth going forward. If you do, it's my recommendation to council that you limit it to the 250 that's been approved, and highly recommend that you continue to search or possibly redesign to get the construction cost down to 220. Because even at that, you're looking at 28 years worth of break even. With that, let's start us. Is there a second round questions we have?
Am I going to be allowed to address that?
Please, please, if you have something specific.
Yeah, because your expense projections are not accurate. So our electric bill is nowhere near $700. We currently pay $120. Our water bill is $0, which you put $200. So
let me specifically refresh. Let me specifically refresh. When I called and asked you for the breakdown of your expenses, you list the expenses precisely as $63,660 a year, which is $5,305, of which we knew exactly what the rent was. And so the remaining amount was split between your new internet expenses and other things such as electricity. I'm not sure what those items are, but I'm using your expense numbers of $5,305 a month starting and moving forward from there.
You have over 100,000 in expenses in your projection, where I have 63,000. It's not quite the same.
because you did not include the cost of capital. You have to amortize the cost of the capital expenditure. You did it on yours on the back end. I just put it in on the front end. But either way, you can't say, look, I put 500,000, I have no operating expenses. It didn't cost me anything. I have no expenses monthly. Well, you have the 500,000 that you put into it and you have to account for that. And that's an amortization schedule. So I gave you amortization over 10 years at 4%. Because if you don't do this project, you can put that $250,000 or $350,000 in a bond, 10-year bond, and earn 4% on it. So you'll have 16 or 14, $13,500 worth of, 4%, another $14,000 of profit there on interest alone per year times 10 years, $140,000. That's your opportunity cost. So you're going from a plus $140,000 to a negative. And that's the point. You have to take into account, and you have never at one point taken into account the opportunity cost of what you're spending this money on and what you're foregoing. And that's one of the things it's a
Our primary objective is not to, as you had stated multiple times on the record, put all of our money in reserves and not spend it and reinvest it into the community.
No,
So you've mentioned that on multiple occasions.
Exactly
yourself.
right.
So
But
this
we
is an
are,
investment into our community, growing the business community, which is one of our chief primary objectives.
correct. But, we're
It's not to
responsible.
invest our money
It's not
into the stock market or bond market.
I understand, but it doesn't
I
do
don't
us to
want-
invest in something that loses $100,000 a month. And next thing you know, you guys are out of business and we're left with a situation. It has to be responsibly managed. Yes, we want to invest into it, but into something that, even if it breaks even, but your break even is at 28 years.
And again, I disagree with the break-even point,
Well,
but that's fine. I think we'll break even sooner than 10 years.
Well, not to get your capital back,
Yes, sir.
not even in the numbers that you gave us.
Yeah, actually it is.
Okay, but we already shown that your numbers are not even accurate. You didn't
Not
even add
accounting for a
correctly on that.
4% interest. Yes, sir. I know. Questions?
No, I just want to thank you for that financial, explanation. You're quite good with numbers, always have been, very good with our budget. I just want to say that I think, that there's a lot of sticking issues. It's not, yes, the money's a big deal and it is publicly funded. Would you privately, as a private individual, spend your money on something like this? I don't know. See, and I always look at it this way. This is my money, and how, we're a lot more careful with our own money than his money or their money. And that's not the way we should be. I try to be very careful with the taxpayer money. But I think one of the issues too is the location.
Right.
The location is just, remember, when it was sold to us, it was interim. This is just, we can't, right now, Old Town area, properties are unavailable right now. What if it becomes available a year from now or 2 years from now? There's someone else who owns property there that might be willing to sell. So the point is, you're all wrapped up for 29 years or 10 years or however long in this shed, when you could have had an opportunity to get a real nice place.
And I definitely agree.
I just think that to spend that kind of money, again, $500,000 on a property that we don't own, in the location that it is just throwing money away.
And if you guys recall, we did try making multiple offers for 2 properties in Old Town, and we're talking over $2 million without any renovation costs.
I know, but there's another property there.
So that escalates
I
any
understand.
return on investment.
Without a doubt, which makes it a challenge, an incredible challenge.
40-year return plus.
So Craig asked a question, but I want to re-ask the question differently. If we say no to this, they've already budgeted another 70,000 for this project. Do they get to keep that 70 and move it to that project?
No, you have to, if this does not approve, they still have $250,000 that can be spent on the remodel of the
But they've
building
also
as what they had
budgeted.
submitted it.
Right? Do you have that?
Budget,
Doesn't matter. what
budget
you
has
budget.
nothing to do with it. Budget
So
has. just
any item
simply-
under 10,000, legally, any item under 10,000, the EDC has the right to spend if it was budgeted.
Under 10.
Individual contracts under 10,000.
right?
Yes, sir.
Well, individual contracts associated with that, exactly, but.
Exactly. Renovation could not exceed the 250,000 that budgeted. I mean, approved.
But you have a line item for
Yes, sir.
another 70.
Yes, sir.
That's irrelevant, really.
The fact
Is it though?
It is, because
Yes.
for example, if we have a budget for a police officer, say a police officer retires, and we have budget for $75,000, but we don't hire somebody, that doesn't mean that everybody else gets that 75,000 added to their paycheck. It means we had it in our budget to have one, we just couldn't find one, and we haven't been able to hire one, and so there's a vacancy, but that just means we still have $75,000 in account, and next year we budget for what we may spend, and then we go out for bid. If we budgeted for the air conditioning and we didn't know what it was gonna cost, and in our budget, we budgeted 50,000, but the price came in for 30,000, we pay the 30,000 because that's what gets
My
approved.
next question is, I know you guys are in a big yank to get that thing, project started, right? You need to get it started, right?
We're paying on a lease at this
I got
point.
you. So my next question is, and this might just kind of throw a monkey wrench into everything. Like your numbers are so far apart, and I'm not a numbers guy. Clearly, my colleague here's not, we're not numbers people. Is there any way like we can get these numbers square? To like, kind of come to and like know what we're dealing with here? Because at this point, I just don't know what I'm dealing with to make an educated, informed decision. I don't, your numbers, his numbers.
Right.
I mean,
So the differences between our numbers are most specifically in cost of capital.
20 years.
Yeah.
The numbers
Well,
are
10 years different, right?
Actually,
10-year payback and 20-year payback.
28-year payback.
20
30 year.
So-
we're off by 20 years.
There's a lot off this. One is inaccurate estimations of inflationary cost on expenses. Another one is in the calculation expectation. of
And I
what
could have
revenues
even
are.
addressed those if
And
you
the
wanted me
third
to.
was the elimination of the cost of capital. So.
Right.
I'm not totally ignorant of financial stuff.
Yeah.
I do understand what's going on here.
I get a little bit of it.
I very much would like to tear into the numbers and stuff. I tried to do that, but we kept up with your expense ratio or your expense gross number, and I broke it out. Admittedly, we knew the 650 on the internet, but the other two, I'm like, I wasn't exactly sure where you came up with the total of the 5,300, but the 5,305 is your number.
Correct.
So that's what I started with.
Correct.
And only separated out rent because that was a known, and then I could have just put other, but just to give an idea, well, we have utilities and whatever, but any comments over here?
Yes, so what you just went through, those are all the financial benefits and expenditures that go along with this project, correct?
Correct.
And what is your mission
Our mission,
of the EDC?
our primary mission is to grow and expand business commerce.
Sales tax and revenue. Sorry,
Please.
Please let them finish.
sorry.
It is to grow the business economy here in Helotes. That is the primary objective.
Okay, so what we have here is the tangible benefits, expenditures, however you want to look at it. But what your mission is quite intangible. It's difficult to measure. So it's not unreasonable for us to spend more than we're making to capture those or help you with your mission.
And typically that is what we face with all of the incentives we approve. You know, even if it's a small business, we're giving $20,000 to, the odds of us actually recapturing dollar for dollar, 20,000. And if we factor in interest, we could have earned on that 20,000. It's never going to equal.
Well, to fulfill your mission, it's going to always be difficult to measure that in
Correct.
dollars.
Correct.
Well,
It's never going to be a dollar for dollar match.
to clarify, that's true. And I'm not really on that point specifically, except for the fact that on your tenant improvements, there are qualifications. For example, it has to be for a business that actually has good sales that would create and generate sales tax. These are office space and not for good services. So this will be somebody coming in and closing a real estate deal. So there'll be no sales tax generation.
That's not actually true. There's a number of economic studies that have been performed. Perryman Group is one of the best known here in Texas that does them. And there's a 7 times multiplier effect when you have any employee in your community on what they will spend on products. So, excuse me, meaning they will buy gas, they will buy food for lunch, they may stop and grab dinner, they may stop and shop at one of our shops, because you do increase the traffic. So it's not necessarily a zero gain to the economy.
But that, and I'm very familiar with that, but what that is we already have that. Because you're talking the person that, for example, lives on Circle A Trail that has a small business and they don't have an office space. So they come and rent this by the hour. And they are already buying the groceries and the gasoline, and we already have their 7 times use. But now they come over here, and let me ask you, when somebody's renting out one of your offices,
You don't have to be a resident, by the way, to rent an office.
Either way, that's fine, that's right. But if they're renting an office by the hour, more than likely, they're not coming in for an hour, setting up shop and having customers come in and buying stuff and charging them sales tax. It's not a sales tax generate, typically speaking. Now, they may have contract goods and they may, but
no, the individual tenants are not.
In general, you're most likely targeting people that are closing mortgages or real estate deals, or there are small businesses, or they're writing or something that it's not a sales tax generated like a gas station would be, or like restaurant would be. So we don't have that added advantage, which is really in the directive of, just to clarify, in the tenant improvement. It would go to somebody that is, I want to build a store so I can sell retail, but not to the person that wants to close real estate deals. They wouldn't qualify, they would.
So it sounds like you're saying then what they're proposing with the business center is not fulfilling their mission.
It doesn't in general, but it does in the sense of being able to bring business and incubate. So there is a portion of it there, but that's where I would consider that we have to take a look at this. And is this a wise financial investment of public funds? Will it create a return, or is it become a black hole? Is some good come out of it? Yes. Does enough come out of it good to justify the expenses? In my opinion, there is good that comes out of this. I still stand behind the approval of the $250,000, but realizing that even at $250,000, even if there's some movement on some of the numbers, it is much longer than a 10-year payback, and it will probably be in the 20s. Unless you can get like 75 or 80, 90% solid, and that would be your room for success. What we have to do is assess what's the probability that they're going to do what already we can't do in the city, and that is keep 100% occupancy. So there is a challenge there. I'm not saying it's insurmountable. I do support what we've approved already, but it's something you're gonna have to decide. Is it worth the calculated risk to get further out, or can you go ahead with what we're going and later on down the road say, this is working out and now we want to do the facade or do a rent to own from the landlord, which I would like to see, quite honestly, say, listen, how about we buy this 5 years, but we buy it and we buy it at the value it is now, and that's where we'll put the money into. I think that would have been a better way to construct the deal. We agree to put in $400,000 in your building, but you agree to sell it right now in X number of years at 1.2 million. For example, that would be a much reasonable thing, because now what you're doing is you're building equity in something, but you don't have that. So it's senseless in talking about coulda, woulda, shouldas, but there would be a better case for long-term investment in capital improvement for long-term survivability of providing services to the city. But especially, and I know some of the minds of EDC, like, well, we want to, as you presented, well, we may leave in 5 or 10 years. Then you got to look at the cost of your capital. There's no way you're getting $400,000 back in 5 years. I don't care what, even at 3 times what your revenues would be at 100%, it doesn't come back. And that's a sunk cost that there's no recovery from. And that has actually done harm to our community, because our community is looking for those monies to be spent to increase the community.
Agree.
Councilman Jen, you have anything, or Greg?
My last word on this topic, on this agenda item, is I still believe in the concept. I still do. I don't have confidence in the numbers yet, like I did before. So we got to somehow come to some kind of reality here for us to go 100% forward, right? I know there's contracts that are ready to get let. I know you're paying rent already. But I don't have confidence in the numbers yet for me to do anything other than to say no on expanding any more expenditures. Well, my last point is the next two agenda items are already addressed in these numbers. They're just part of the expenses that would be passed on to your customers, correct? As part of the cost of rent.
To clarify, even if item number 9 doesn't pass, items number 10 and 11 are still viable options.
Yep,
They
that's
still
what
have the option to be able to do that with their other budgeted money, but it involves contracts. So even if they do the 250,000 construction, they still from funds may want to do that. So I'd be
Yeah.
clear,
That is right.
yes or no has nothing to do with items number 10 and 11.
I just want to make sure because that's important how we proceed on the last two items. So
We've approved 250. If we've approved 10 and 11, then it's 300.
Effectively, as far as total cost of expenditures, that would be correct. However, in some of that is recuperated, and we'll clarify more of that.
Yeah, like the internet's not
all.
all upfront, by the
Yeah.
way. It's a monthly
Yeah, that's a
expenditure.
monthly over 3 years, for example, but
Yeah.
let's
In
keep that.
essence, it would be.
In essence, it would be
It could
correct.
be like saying, okay, we approved 250, now we're gonna approve additional 50.
okay,
Okay.
I think we're ready to go.
All right, anybody else? Okay, so with no further discussion, all in favor of approving item number 9 to increase from 250 to 330,000 for the development of the visitor center, say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion denied. Move on to item number 10, looking for motion and a second to discuss and take action on item number 10 is written.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move we discuss and take action on agenda item number 10 as written.
Okay, motion by Sanders, second by Cato. Go ahead, sir.
So those of you who weren't familiar with it, so EC came last month asking for more money with a different contract service provider. I think it's kind of good luck. It didn't work out and you're able to come in, if I understand the numbers right, you're coming in at a lower price over a 3-year contract, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so since we fundamentally supported the internet last month, I have no problem continuing to support that. My question though, I specifically did not ask you I think some of the questions I should have asked you last month. So when we talk about high speed, when you negotiated that contract, what is the EDC's definition of high speed and what are the speed rates that you think a 6-office facility requires?
So we're looking at a dedicated fiber line to this space. So in the easiest way, if you're not familiar with how a traditional residential internet line works, the actual contractor suggested this scenario, right? Think of 5 o'clock traffic on 1604, right? Despite the speed limit being 65 miles an hour, you're not going 65 miles an hour. So like your internet right now is probably 300 megs. You may pay for a little more. You're never going to hit that max because it's shared network, right? The dedicated fiber, we're going for a 50 by 50 in this proposal. We get 50 miles an hour because it is a dedicated to our building.
So I'm looking for megabits a second kind of information that's still
Yeah.
applicable. And that's still a way to rate your
Correct.
bandwidth.
So it is a
we're
50.
talking 500 and are you
50.
talking a gig?
50 megabytes, 50 meg upload, 50 meg download.
Okay, that's downloads, but what's the actual bandwidth speed? Are we talking
That-
500 megabits? There's a difference.
No, there's
No,
not.
There is. Bandwidth, upload, download are different.
it's not on this particular
It's
service.
it's a pure dedicated fiber. So basically what it is that you don't share that with anyone else. You're not sharing it like you do in your home or a business line. So it's a dedicated, that's what we have here in the city. We have a pure dedicated 50 by 50. That means it's pure, that's it. And it's 50
Gigabyte.
50 mega.
Mega-
You're saying 50
megabyte, right.
megabits a
Mhm.
second.
Now, is this not internet either? It's not internet, it's not Wi-Fi.
We would have Wi-Fi
Right.
access points, but that
Otherwise,
kind of ties into the fiber.
All right, I'm not gonna debate this issue. So
So at home, if you're paying for 300 megabytes, right, that's the basic plan now with Spectrum, you don't get 300.
yeah, but
It's not
inside,
promised.
but inside your facility, how is that shared out? It goes through a router and then it is
Yes.
distributed. And
It
so
is
that's-
distributed and managed. So there's a managed network switch on the inside
and
that where
so-
we can allocate specific bandwidths and prioritize. So if we do have a video conference room, if we're able to build that out, then we could prioritize the video conference over someone streaming YouTube or, whatever.
you're competing internally and you won't have to be competing with your.
Correct, and that's
properties, which is a
Right.
big difference.
yeah,
it
and
is.
that's the right, and that's what I wanted to hear.
It still amounts to $100 a month per office, whether somebody's renting it or not.
So it doesn't matter about the number of devices that are on your internal network.
No, not at all.
Correct.
Not at all.
All right.
Yeah, no, the city started out with the 50 by 50 and you have 82 employees. I don't remember how many.
We increased it.
Connections.
Yeah, we increased
So
it to
100.
100 by 100.
So you're following the same model as the city's direct
Correct.
fiber.
Correct. And so I do want to clarify the price. It is not, we just got the contract Monday. And I had to set up a meeting with AT&T to understand it because it was a little bit confusing. There's little notes on some of these line items that say it's 100% discounted, 92% discounted. And then when you factor that in, our bill will be $499 a month plus tax.
Which is about $650 because they have huge communication.
They're saying $20 to $30.
Okay.
We don't pay that much now, but I think it's all a percentage of your bill.
So
So
my cell phone bill is 120 plus taxes equals 200. So it's going to be some.
Okay, I don't have anything.
Jen?
I think.
I'm sorry.
second.
I'm fine.
No, I don't have any issues with it.
I don't, I'm supportive of this too, because this is a critical part of the project.
yes.
This is really important to make it successful, as opposed to some of the other things we talked about in the last agenda item, so.
I'm looking at the resolution. On the resolution, it has, whereas on November 15th, authorized executive director to negotiate a contract with a service provider in an amount not to exceed $13,333 per year. Well, and you were saying, and you're asking, the agenda item actually says 25,000 over a contract duration of 3 years. But the resolution, that 13,333 times 3 is 39,000.
The difference is that was a named provider and this is a new named provider. So it's really more of a housekeeping. This is going to be with AT&T, the other one with the Spectrum. So while you're correct, we had authorized this much, so this falls below it, so it'd be okay. Because they named the provider, it's a little bit of a housekeeping. It's a new provider's name, so it's a little bit of a formality. So if we disapproved it, then they would be stuck with the other one for more money.
Well, how much was the other one?
Basically
13.
10,000, 10
It was this
a
one.
year.
10,000.
So we're gonna change that number then.
Yes, to lower.
So we're gonna
Well,
lower
the
that number.
EDC board,
Right.
yeah, that was referencing what the EDC board approved back in November.
Oh, this is an old
Yes.
one. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in our city resolution, we already approved Spectrum for this amount. Now this is asking for
So we're not
AT&T for a lower
approving
amount.
this resolution.
No.
We're approving a new resolution with the newer
That's
numbers.
the backup documentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. All right.
All right. Anybody other comments? Okay, all in favor of approving item number 10 is written, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And finally, our last item, I'll look for motion to second to discuss, take action on item number 11 as written.
Mayor, I move we discuss and take action on agenda item number 11 as written.
Motion by Sanders, second by
I'll second that.
Massey. Go ahead, sir.
So just refresh my memory. So the vision is Monday through Friday, as far as operating hours, 8 to 5.
That the main doors would be open, yes, sir.
Is the expectation
This-
though, you will actually have people working there after hours on
Yes, sir.
weekends?
Yes, sir. The intent is to be 24/7 for the clients that do rent.
Okay.
And that is the reason for the security and the access control.
So how many people did you guys actually reach out to when it comes to the security? Your security plan?
So I have 3 bids that we received, all with varying capabilities and prices. Access control for one of them with install was 18,000 by itself. Hardware and install, I'll clarify.
How many devices?
We have 6, hold on. Yeah, we have 6 cameras and we have 8 access control. NFC Bluetooth readers for the doors.
18,000 for all of that, the cameras and the access control?
No, the 18,000 was just access control, and one of the other high bids, the bid that I put on the agenda tonight was, in my opinion, the best bid, because this one is access control, and the cameras communicate with each other. It's all on one network, one dashboard. Many of the other products out there do not communicate, and they're 2 separate contracts, separate devices, separate logins. So if a door is triggered, the camera has no idea. There's no communication. This particular software with Verkada is AI powered. So when you walk through that door, that camera tags it. It knows it's you. It follows even behind if there's someone else comes in behind you or whatever.
So,
Do we need that level of security?
yeah, I have background in quite a bit of security. And so I know the first thing when you're building a security plan is you identify what's important. What are you trying to protect? Correct. And then you have to look at what's the threat, what's the possibility of that threat actually occurring. And so now I'm thinking, okay, the environment that this building sits in or near, I start asking questions to myself. Well, you're right next to the police station, and the fire department's right on the back side of the building, which is 24/7. There's people back there smoking, joking, or whatever. So there's people all around the building. It is right by a major highway, so it's not. Helotes is not a major crime facility. I mean, a lot of crime happening. To me, Glenn, this feels like way over-engineered. The key piece I didn't know, though, and so thank you for answering that, was the plan was to make this 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
That does change the calculus in my mind a little bit when it comes to the actual locking mechanisms per se. I think there's way too much technology in your cameras, because think about it, cameras don't deter crime. They can potentially deter crime, but they're really used after the fact that the crime or whatever bad thing that you don't want to happen.
Agreed.
You use them for try to pull videos and show it as evidence, but it doesn't stop it necessarily, right? If people see a camera, potentially that's deterrence. I don't know if we need artificial intelligence that goes 30 meters out into almost out to Bandera Road detecting motion. The high-end outdoor, I don't know if we need facial recognition. I do think we need to know, right? If we get down to what the real requirements are, you need to know who's coming and going. And if you're gonna have multiple people sharing office spaces throughout the course of a week, that's a lot easier to manage with what I call them proxy cards. That's what we use at our homeowners association rec center, or me and council member Cato involved in a lot of the security stuff that's been put in place there.
Mhm.
So we always approach it that way. What's important, right? What's critical to the facility? What's the actual threat that's out there in the environment, and what's the likelihood if it's going to happen? And then you base your plan off of that. I just know that salespeople, will sell you the best and the brightest. I went to that vendor site. You guys, that is the best product they actually sell. But do you need?
The card reader is not their best
No,
product.
but your cameras.
The cameras are.
And so, and I don't know the way we broke this up. It's in the hardware cost, software, and I am
Right.
interested in the software piece. That's a huge expenditure that seems to have a logistics tail the longer that we have a contract with them, right? So my thought is, I'm not a big fan of the design. I do agree you guys have to have security in this facility. And based off of all the other numbers we've been throwing around, I'm gonna vote no on this. I'm just gonna tell you right up front, but I would like you guys to come back with something that's more reasonable, that actually I think your real requirement. And I really think you guys really need to go back and say, what, no kidding, do we need? What's a need, not a want? Convenience is an important, but there's a cost associated with that. Is there something you can do that's not quite so convenient? Do you really need a camera on the back side of the building? Well, one camera on the front of the building suffice. Does it need to be the top grade A with artificial intelligence and face recognition? Or can it be something that's a little bit more mundane, but gets the job done? Those are the kind of things I think all of us were kind of discussing tonight. Now that I'm trying to recap what I think I've heard tonight, is go back and look at what's still the art of the possible within reason. Just because we can spend money doesn't mean we should. And there's a business case that where this thing the break-even point may be going out 15, 20 years. I don't think any of us, EDC or us, want that to happen. So anyways, I'm done talking. Thanks, Glenn.
Well, I'd like to, I'd like to, reiterate, I agree with, council member there. I was wondering, do any of the other buildings have security? I mean, the same buildings. Are there any security cameras?
Yes, the landlord does have, I believe, 6 security cameras, 3 on each building. And there was a vehicle that was stolen out of the parking lot just a month ago. So being close to the police department doesn't necessarily always deter crime.
Yeah, there's the probability and the likelihood. That was a piece of the equation I thought about.
Yeah, I agree that the fact that facial recognition and all of this other stuff, like I said, this is the Cadillac of security systems for a little shed over here that's close to the police department. And, I guess the bottom line is cars get stolen, okay? You want to make sure that the people who go in and out are secure, the individual, right?
I'm actually more worried about the property that these business owners have. So one of the tenants that I've been talking with is going to planning to put $15,000 worth of equipment in that office. If I don't have an adequate security system, one, he won't lease. His insurance would likely not insure him in the space. So to me, it is a critical component. We are protecting other people's assets, not just our own.
That's true, but to be fair, security access code and fob keys like we have here at City of Helotes, which identifies people with no cameras.
If I busted through that door with a can of CO2, you would have no idea I did it. You would have no idea it was me.
That is
That's
correct.
the
We would
challenge.
be relying on the other cameras, right? And we'd have to review footage. Now, we wouldn't have to
Correct.
review months worth of footage. We know that something happened overnight tonight, and tomorrow we'd look at the last 12 hours. I'm just saying is that when you have fob key access and it's security, no matter what security you have, if somebody smashes through the window, it doesn't matter what kind of, it doesn't prevent something from happening, it just records it, right? So that's not a matter of insurance sake because you still have security and fob. It's just what level of recognition for prosecuting do you have? It doesn't change the probability of crime happening.
You need to be able to identify the person's face and who it is, not necessarily who it is, but you could take it and show it around or put it somewhere and say, okay, they can identify it. So it needs to be a good quality camera, but I don't know that AI is. I think a little.
I mean, I don't know. Is 3 MP better, any less qualified when you're dealing in a parking lot that's only 20 feet? I mean, we're not dealing with large, open spaces necessarily, right? So is a 3 MP camera meet the requirement versus a 5 MP camera with artificial intelligence? That's don't misunderstand me, Glenn. And that's a good point that you brought up about customers bringing in valuable equipment and keeping it there. I'm not sure everybody on the panel knew that, right? So that's an excellent point. And that drives the equation that I was talking about earlier when you define your security plan.
I have another question, if you don't mind. So this is for 30,000 over 5 years, so it's $6,000 a year. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that how much
No.
this is?
So
Not to exceed
there's a couple of
30,000 over a contract duration of 5 years. What does that mean?
there's a couple of fixed costs that are up front. So the hardware is $67.71, which was on the last page of the presentation, and the installation cost of $14,620. The software cost is a 5-year agreement, and that is almost $7,500. So what that also gets us, what's different about
Software for
Vericata
what?
to manage the access control and the security cameras. So
But
there is
this-
no on-site hosting of video footage. It's all cloud-based.
Right.
It includes the warranty. If a camera goes out, if any component of this goes out, they overnight the product to get it installed. Includes all the software updates for all the cameras, because that does happen on a regular basis.
And monitoring, does it include monitoring?
It's
So
not
if
monitored
something-
by like a police department. What it does is it
Like
allows you to
ADT
set,
calls in if somebody breaks and
it
smashes
allows
the
you to set
window.
alerts, depending on what trigger points that you want to set, and it will notify those people.
But not 911.
No,
It'll notify you.
Like to dispatch, right, to dispatch.
it could.
Okay. But it's not a monitor like
It's not,
ADT.
no.
So we still don't even have security monitoring. It's just cameras
Notification.
and locks
It's not ADT monitoring, right?
or some such company. Okay.
I'm still confused about, you said that there's fixed costs at the very beginning, 6771, 14,620, and
Yeah.
7,500.
And the
22,500 up front and $1,500 a year for 5 years for software management for a total of $7,500 worth of contract on top of 22,500 of expenditures for a
Yes, sir.
total of 30,000
yes, sir.
essentially.
Okay. I think it's too much for the building that you're going to be in. And I think we should look at it. I'm not saying you don't need security. I think we can get, a Chevrolet rather than a Cadillac. Okay, but that's how I feel.
So I had the initial reaction of Councilmember Sanders when I looked at this. So I reached out to somebody today who is a technical person. And he made the point that Councilmember Cato just made, that you want the high quality in the event there'd be an emergency. And then the second point this individual made was that there's going to be a lot of equipment in the building potential, and that people who come and want to lease may be deterred if the security is not there. So for me, this goes down to essential making this a success. So I would support this. That doesn't mean that my frugality wouldn't want you to push that vendor as much as possible and say,
I agree.
do you have a coupon? Do you have a EDC special of the month? And I just encourage you to continue to do that, because I do know salespeople, and that's their job, and they're good at it. But if they know the dollars are there, they're going to push for it. And so I will approve this with the faith that you need it and you know that. But I also just want to encourage you to, because as soon as I see AI, that sounds fancy to us. The reality is AI has been around for a long time. It's just become the latest buzzword, right?
Yes. And we could look at, if it is the recommendation, we could look at removing some of those cameras if you don't believe they're essential. That obviously would reduce both the hardware, software, and installation cost. And the access control cannot be changed.
I mean, any idea what that reduction would be? Did you even get that bid?
I don't think in here it is broken down.
So it's essentially about $15,000 worth of installs, $16,000 worth of install.
Yeah.
My only concern about this really kind of falls in that same point. I don't think the equipment price is so much a problem. It's an outrageous install price, quite honestly, outrageous install price.
That's the lowest.
And the software licensing.
But then the software license is above and beyond that on
Yeah.
top of that. But for example, I just did, high def cameras, which would be 4 on the inside. I understand it's not the same system and not integrated system. I get that, but you have 4 high def cameras and they'll give you the equipment for free and the install for free. You just monitor it for $20 a month and you get monitoring. And then you get a separate access to track who's coming in and who opened the door. But the point being, just like at the pool, we know that George opened the door at 3:00 and we know that something happened at 3:08. We start with George and work our way back. But and then we got the high def cameras in there scanning whatever, and you just match up the times.
Yeah.
My point is that there are options to be able to go. I don't vote on this or whatever we're saying, but the point is that you have something that's integrated and can do all this. And the question is, that's very neat. Is it worth that going with that extent? is there really that much need when we have police driving by on a regular basis on there and checking in? But to the point of options and need, there's cases for all points. There are additional comments?
I need more information. I mean, I would think without the facial recognition. I mean, because like, as Rich said, I mean, it could reduce your hardware and software costs.
That is just what their cameras include.
Yeah, it's built in. I
Yeah.
didn't see it. They all have it.
So at this
but
point,
you can buy different,
Megapixel, different angles.
well, you can get 3
Yeah.
3 MP versus a 5 MP. It
Right.
just means you're gonna have a really big file if you have a 5 MP.
Resolution
versus,
too.
You know, how much resolution do you need?
Yeah.
Do you need that one? I definitely, I mean, I would love to have top of the line products for everything, but we've already talked about the fact that the sky's not the limit on the break even point on this. So the more money that we spend is the juice worth the squeeze, as they say, right? And again, I'm asking you guys to go back and verify the no kidding requirement. I am not saying you don't need security. That I did not say that. But my opinion is we may have over-engineered something that, you know, it looks sexy, it's cool. And to be honest with you, I think an influencing factor, in my opinion, is we don't have really a dedicated person to manage that, right? It's going to be kind of ad hoc between the chamber and maybe you. And so an automated solution is a lot easier to approve because there's less man hours involved in managing it. And oh, by the way, we never talked about the mailroom. Are we having a mailroom?
And that's one reason why we went with this system is
So
that
we
it
gotta
is
go to mailroom.
all automated and they were willing to throw the guest service and mailroom in with this package
Really?
for free.
Well, no, that's good to know. That's good to
So-
know. I don't know.
That's nice.
Just one last comment. Just remember that these vendors, they see a city coming with money and they will stick it to you. Because
Understand.
private individuals would not spend this kind of money for this kind of thing.
So-
They would give them a deal. The installation fee, for example.
For commercial businesses, there is no free install. You do have to have a license with TDLR. It is a very different animal than residential.
I understand.
And we did
that.
get multiple quotes. This was not the one and only
So
for different products.
So my last comment. So I've already told you how I'm gonna go with this. Let's say, you know, it does, I don't know how my colleagues are gonna vote on this. Let's say it actually gets voted down. That does not stop you guys from moving forward. Once we get the numbers squared away for you guys to actually start doing the construction, right?
I wouldn't start construction without knowing I can do access control or security cameras because I wouldn't be able to rent the property.
Those
I
are,
mean, that's,
I'm not saying they're bolt-on.
they're not,
accessories, but stuff is rack mounted and it's stuff running up where you're still building out the ceilings and drop down ceilings and stuff. I mean, you don't have to have a finished room to have all your security ready to go. I mean, there's a step-by-step process. Is there not?
He's saying the opposite. You need to know what you're gonna do when you build it so you can build it into it. But there's a long ways before you're ready to put the security system wiring in.
but if I go and start renovations, right, I'm committed to 250,000 in renovation is what was
There's no
approved.
report. You're saying there's no.
If I'm not able to install this, there's no point in building it.
So this is the only security system on
I-
all options
no.
whatsoever. And that's all he's saying is that is there, what I understand Councilman is saying is that if there are other options to take a look at, that's what he's suggesting, take a
Why
look at a
didn't you
few.
bring some of those other options so that we could have seen them?
They did.
The EDC board picked,
They pick one.
they picked the best one that they wanted to move
Well, they
forward
could
with.
have, you could have asked them, hey, you know, the city council usually likes to see 2 or 3, you know, whatever. Again, it's hard. You just give us one thing. This is it, guys. If you don't give it to us, we can't do anything. That's blackmail.
That's not.
I'm sorry.
These cameras are pretty standard. Then the difference in going, you know, from facial recognition is really going to be software at that point. A hardware change, I don't think is going to change that much. So then you're talking a couple $1,000s, maybe 3,000. So 27 versus 30.
Right.
I don't think we're going to save much money by having it go back.
Just the access control with Brevo, a completely different company from Verkada, was $18,000, just access control. No cameras.
What was the out year cost? There's a one-time fee and then you
No.
don't have to keep paying?
No, there's monthly fees
Okay,
associated.
so they all play that game.
And this is for everything.
Sure.
It's software.
All right.
I mean, your Microsoft Office is now a monthly subscription.
Yeah, they all do that now, right? Yeah.
All right.
Figured it out.
So before, any pertinent questions?
Just like with this security system, have you thought to increase the amount you're asking for rents? Like this is significant.
So, I mean, rent changes on an annual basis, and when we did our evaluation, and we run it twice since planning the project, right now, we still feel comfortable that we fall in line. Because we need to be below the market average because the look of the center, right? Limited parking, all those kind of factors play into what we can charge on rental rate.
You can, we're getting into a different, we're going back to the other
true.
thing, but I think your rents are significantly low, quite honestly, and that might be one of your solutions to your break-even analysis. But if you're offering internet speeds that nobody has in the entire Bear County or state of Texas, and security beyond everything, because nobody has 50 by 50 for 6 people that are there that are rent by the hour and various, pretty much empty. You got like one person on a 50 by 50 at a time. You're offering diamond plated services, diamond plated security and diamond plated finish out, and you're charging dirt prices. As you pointed out, if you want to get a small office, you're spending $4,500 a month, and now you're looking at $600 a month with all of this included and all their utilities included. You could easily be twice that rent and still be just as much out. I mean, if I was looking for office and I get it for $1,000 a month, I could walk in and have everything taken care of, including effectively $350 worth of utilities that I would have had to pay. That's a no-brainer. But something for consideration on your pricing going forward. But to the issue here for the security, if there's any additional significantly different questions of what I've already been asked. Oh,
So I just want to go back to my last question. You're saying you do not feel comfortable moving forward with any construction
Until we have
the
this locked
security
down.
thing is squared away.
It's critical.
No, I don't disagree. with
I mean,
you.
that,
Can you bring it back in a month?
I mean, depending on how the council agendas work, I mean, next meeting, if I got it in time.
Well, I mean,
I don't think you're gonna
But
start
you're-
construction in a month.
what would you do in a
No.
month though? I mean,
No.
I mean,
Removing 2 cameras, like I said, is probably gonna save $3,000. So we've already researched other products and there's not a significant cost savings for the simplicity that this would make my life. As you mentioned, we don't have a big staff team. I personally don't think it's smart to go through and have multiple platforms that I'm having to manage, control the access and all that kind of stuff.
I don't want to unnecessarily delay.
So this was the
you guys
simplest
either.
product.
I'm just trying to think of the economics as well. And I know some things are intangible, right? Security and confidence in I want the center to be successful. I wouldn't want to do anything that would
I think the one,
cause it to fail.
yeah, the one component you mentioned is cameras. We can go back, and at
mean-
least address that component.
If it does get approved tonight, my expectation would be that you would still go back to see if you can continue to find a slightly better price. That would be
Absolutely.
my expectation.
this item, and just to clarify, so maybe we can go on, it's a not to exceed 30,000. So if they can find something that's less thousand, then they can do that. But at this point, I think we should go ahead and have a vote unless there's any objection. So all in favor of approving item number 11 as written, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
In that case, motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
At this point, we will be adjourning the meeting with all business conducted. The time is now 8:53. We are adjourned.